Billings Home Brew Shop. Today we're gonna a box of BrewZilla and start to use it. I have my friend here, Drew. Say hi, Drew.
How's it going, everybody?
And we'll get started.
Awesome. Pretty nicely. It comes in. It's pretty straightforward. You get set up and go. So you look right here. Got a lid for our BrewZilla. We'll use that ball valve grain rod that's in there. So set that out, and we'll put these pieces on a pump rod that'll pump water out of the bottom of the BrewZilla back up to the top, so you can circulate the whole time. Little hook that'll just carry out your grain. Put it in the bed. You pull it in and out of the box. All right, and so the next thing we got to take out of the box here is the wort chiller. So comes next in the box here. We have this piece of equipment. Comes with the BrewZilla here. Essentially, you'll just attach some tubing and a hose bib on this side. It'll run some cold water through here and run hot water out as it heats up, because we're going to take the heat out of the beer inside the BrewZilla, right? So we'll set this piece over here and keep going. So this piece of tubing right here comes, so we can set this. We'll actually attach it to the top of this this pump bib right here, so that way we can circulate all of our water in and out during our brew process. That way nothing stays stagnant inside the BrewZilla. You can keep the water moving the whole time with the built-in pump. All right. So the next thing we're going to pull out here, this is where the grain's going to sit inside this this tub. It's got feet on it it'll rest on these 4 rods that sit inside the BrewZilla. This thing right here, we'll put a false bottom in right here. That'll be this piece right here. We'll sit false bottom on the bottom. We'll put our grain in there. We'll let it steep inside the BrewZilla right here. So this piece will slide all the way back in. When we're done and we want to sparge, we'll actually lift this piece out, set it onto the side like that. It'll rest nicely on top of the BrewZilla here. And then we'll put, hot water in, or whatever we're going to use to sparge. Through this, let it drain all the way through. And then we can just take this out, discard our grain from it, and what's left is the actual false bottom for the BrewZilla itself down in there. That's where your hop and all of the stuff like that'll come next in the brew process after the steeping. That's where all of the solids from that will sit as we continue to brew with the equipment. So let's set this over here. And now the coup de grace, essentially, we're going to go ahead and pull out the false bottom right here. It's got legs on it and everything like that, so it keeps about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of space between the bottom. And that's where your pump inlet's going to be down in here. Yeah, so we'll pull the last piece of cardboard out, and then you can see the bottom here. You have a pump inlet kind of down here. It'll run a pump through, and it'll pump it out through this spigot here, and I'll pull the equipment out here. But you also have your heating element down here. That's what you're going to use to essentially heat your water. So we can suck hot water from the bottom, pump it back through the top with this piece of equipment, so that way nothing stays, or everything stays moving. Nothing burns at the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and, we got the BrewZilla out of the box. We're going to go ahead and take the styrofoam pieces off. Put this guy up on the chair for a second, and I can show you guys the face of the display and everything like that. So we got our power, temperature control, how long, if you want to put a timer on or anything like that, you can. You're going to heat your temperatures up and cool them down over here. This is how you'll start and stop and pause everything. This particular piece of equipment also has some presets that you can do. So you can take your, you can make presets right here, and you have 6 of them. You can choose if you have specific temperatures and timers that you normally use, or specific beer styles that you typically make. You can go ahead and set those up ahead of time and just hit those buttons and get going. You've got 3 switches, a 500 watt and a 1000 watt switch. That's for the heaters. So if you want to run at 1000, you can. If you want to run at 500, you can, and you can also run at 1500.
Typical household has 120 volts.
Absolutely. It absolutely will. This will just plug in directly to your regular wall outlet, and everything works just fine. So we'll just plug this in like you would any other appliance in your house, right? As long, just make sure that, safety-wise, that everything's still working good and everything like that. But out of the box, everything works great. I haven't had any problems with mine. But yeah, everything works great. Usually I run it at 1500 when I'm going up to my boil, and then when I get it up there, I'll turn the 1000 off and let it maintain the temperature and everything like that. Typically, if I'm trying to speed things up or anything like that, I'll run both switches. But generally, when you're maintaining your temperatures for your, if you're steeping your grains or anything like that, you can just leave it at 500 and go. And I usually only use the 1500 when I'm in a rush or anything like that. So, but the last switch we haven't talked about, this is just the pump switch. You'll turn that guy on when you want to run, pump any liquids throughout. I use this almost throughout the brew process. When I'm steeping my grain, it allows the liquid to be pulled through the bottom and cycle through the top. And so you're always kind of running the water through the equipment. right? You just set it in. You got these cam lock fittings like that. There's a special valve right here. I think it's a 1/2-inch quarter turn valve. You can go ahead and close it and open it, but you can also just open it in segments. I will often watch and make sure that as I'm steeping my grains and everything like that, that I'm not sucking too much out of the bottom and then like flooding the top. Get a nice cycle through, but it's really nice to have because you don't want any of those sugars to get trapped in your grain bed. And so that way you can kind of maximize, if you keep the water moving, it keeps flushing and keeps those sugars moving. It also is really nice because you don't run into the problems that you have with either dry malt extract or some liquid malt extracts where you put them in the pot and they can kind of get stuck or something like that and then kind of scorch a little bit. You kind of run out of you leave those problems behind when you just keep the water cycling and moving. You don't have to stir it all yourself. You don't have to do anything. You can kind of just leave it going and the water moves. So, yep. So that's everything that's in the box. We'll go ahead and put some of this stuff together really quick and show you how it all fits. We went ahead and put some of this stuff together really quickly. The only things that we've done so far is we attached some small pieces to the bottom, the false bottom of the BrewZilla here. It's just this little piece. Allows you to go ahead and pull it out really easily when you go ahead and need to clean that later. We also just installed the handles for the lids. So when this lid's on top, it's gonna get really hot. It's gonna get really hot. So when you want to pull that off, you wanna just make sure that you have something to grab onto that isn't the glass or anything like that. And we also just attached that piece of tubing to our pump bib, right? And that thing sits right here and allows us to flow back in. So we'll go ahead and try to put some of this stuff together. The only thing that you really need will be one of these wrenches here. We've got to go ahead and have this 3/4 turn, or this quarter turn ball valve placed in the BrewZilla here. We've lifted it up on the table. So it goes in this hole right there, fits in right there. You go ahead and you're going to go have a bolt on the other side of that valve. We're going to tighten it up. You can see it gets in there nice and snug. It doesn't need to be super duper tight enough though. And it's gasketed, so you'll make sure.
Hand tight or just?
I would tighten it just a little bit more. It doesn't need to be much more than hand tight. Just make sure that it's in there kind of snug. I like to run the wrench on it just in case. That way you can't, nothing leaks out of there or anything like that. Awesome. Should be good to go. So now that we got that valve installed, we'll go ahead and place the false bottom in the bottom of the BrewZilla. So you go ahead and just pop it in there. All right, we've attached this little eyepiece and it slides very nicely all the way down and it'll rest on the bottom. So this false bottom, it has some feet. Just want to make sure that you miss the kind of integral parts down there, the heater down there, the pump suction, and your valve. So when you're putting this in, you can see that there's some dots on all three sides here that show you where the feet are. So as you slide this in, you want to go ahead and just make sure that your parts miss that, and it'll set nicely down there at the bottom, just like that. Next way, or the next part to setting up the BrewZilla here is going to be to put in your grain bed. So it's this basket here. Right now, it's just an open-ended, cylindrical tube. So the way that we're going to essentially solve that is we're going to take this rod that comes with the BrewZilla, and it threads nicely into this bottom. Right, it allows you to just go like that, and this can be just hand tight and everything like that, and this will rest on there. That'll hold your lid, but you can see our feet. I usually like to rest it right here on top of that. You can see how they sit nicely on the very top of the BrewZilla here. We can go ahead and we'll place our false bottom in here. It slides nicely in there. And when you go to start brewing, you heat your water up to whatever your strike temperatures are. Get it in there. You can come up here, you can set this up. You can dump your grain, put your little cap on it, so that way you don't shoot your grain out of your bed. You want to put your grain in right there. Oop, take your lid off. Attach your top. That'll sit on top of your grain bed, just like that, just quite nicely. Put your little cap back on. And then you have your hook right here. This hook will fit nicely in these openings. That way you can lift your grain bed or your grain up. You rotate this 90 degrees so you're no longer on your feet, and it'll slide nicely down in there, right? And then this piece you can either take out like that, or you can leave it in there. I like to take it out because it gets hot. We're gonna go ahead, put our lid on now. So if we imagine this as having a full recipe's worth of grain in there, we'll go ahead and pop the lid on. It fits very snug, and you can go ahead and take these latches here, tighten them down. And as we go through, on all four sides here, go ahead and latch it together. So it holds it in there nice, go like that. And then we'll go ahead and attach our pump nozzle, I guess, here. So I run my tubing into the beer, or into the grain bed. Again, put this in there, latch it up, make sure it's open, and then you can make sure that this valve is open. So, right, that's closed is crossed, open is that way, straight up and down, so the lines run. And I'll, turn our pump on. That'll suck our water out, and that way when you're mashing, you can circulate your water all the way through. Leave it like that for about an hour or 90 minutes or so, whatever your recipe calls for, right? When that's done, you'll go ahead and you'll close that, and turn your pump off, right? You can then loosen your cam lock fittings, turn your pump off to the side, just like that. Is usually how I do it. Take this out. It'll run over there.
You usually have a cup or something.
Yep, yeah, just a little bucket or something off to the side that this would drain into a little bit. And if you wanted to, you could even use a gravity siphon and hold it like that, leave that open. Your liquid will flow back down as long as the top of the liquid is higher. You can get most of that liquid back in there. And you shut it like that. I usually just leave it attached. It'll drip into that. And then you can take your lid off pretty easily. Boom. And again, after you mash, it's going to be hot. So you're going to want to go ahead and use these holders here. Take your lid off. Put your lid on the table. You can grab your hook here. Slide it into our holes, and then you want to again lift up, rotate to your feet on the top of your BrewZilla here, and you'll hear the water draining as you're going. You can pop your cap off, your grain lid, and then you can start sparging, dumping water, or however you want to do it on top of your grain. Once that's done, I usually keep a bucket off to the side that this will fit into. Take this off, put it in there, put this in the bucket, or just let it drain into the bucket, and then you have finished mash right in there. You can put your lid back on, set it to boil, and let it run. Put your hose back in there, turn your pump back on, and get off to boiling. Once you're boiled, you add your hops, everything like that. Once you're done boiling, right, that's when we're going to come back to our wort chiller. This comes again with the BrewZilla, but once we're done with everything, we'll go ahead, put this guy in the BrewZilla, right? It'll rest in there once we turn all of the burners off and everything like that. It'll rest in the top. We'll pump cold water through this side. It'll come in, run through all of this, and we'll pump hot water out there because it will take the heat from the beer. It'll heat up the water, spit it out over there, and it'll cool your beer down to whatever temperature you need it to be to go ahead and put it in your carboys, right? And then from there, you can just put your pump tubing into whatever carboy you use for fermentation, turn your pump on, open it up, and pump it directly from the BrewZilla into your carboy, and then all you need is an airlock, and you're off to the races. Pitch your yeast, and you're good to go. So BrewZilla is pretty simple to use from opening it out of the box and having a finished beer.